say
Top Billin. Yo, Top Billin. Back with another one. I love these series where I'm imploring people to think the game through. That's something that really interests me. I don't care about deep balls and home runs and all that. Y'all know I'm into the nuances of any sport that I'm talking about, especially my beloved passion of football. So inviting real football heads to come with some of these series. I've been doing the Think Like a GM thing. You've seen me do it with the New York Jets and several other teams where we're thinking outside the box and seeing what they should do via free agency or via the draft. Just a different take on your stuff that you would normally see on Twitter or Facebook, you know, all that shit that I absolutely hate. Social media, right? Cesspool. Bringing those people, having to weed them out and try to get real football heads up here in the comment section up on Top Billin. So did the Think Like a GM series, going to continue to do that for several teams. Now I want to do a first Think Like a Scout. So with Think Like a Scout, I want to do it more like a comprehensive approach. This could get a little superfluous here, could be kind of long or whatever like that. So real men, watch to the end and then comment. I just want to go through and talk about some of the things that I would do if I'm a scout and we're talking about some of these high-level players. I know you guys like quarterbacks, so I thought that I would start off with your boy Mac Jones from Alabama, right? Immaculate. Your boy's immaculate. He had a great year. Mac Jones absolutely killed it. There's no doubt about that. But me, in my thinking like a scout and having the ability to lean in on some people that some of you guys may know, and some of my friends who are actually scouted in the NFL, and some high-level coaches and everything, just bouncing stuff off them and seeing if what I have in my brain is correct from their vantage point. And I think I'm pretty much on the money with some of this thinking, right? So I'm one of these people, like I tried to tell people before, I never grew up just liking teams. I always like coaches and I like players. So I would follow certain players through high school, like Peyton Manning, my all-time favorite player. Follow him. First saw him on Scholastic Sports of America. Follow him through college, through the NFL. Watch every one of his games in college and in the NFL. So if he was a coach, I was in the Colts, he went to the Broncos, I follow Peyton Manning. So that's like that with several players, whether it be Steve Young, Keyshawn Johnson, all these people that I liked as kids, or Bill Parcells and people like that. So I remember I used to listen to a show with Bill Parcells. It was actually Bill Parcells and Keyshawn Johnson. It was around maybe like 2008 or something like that. They had a show on ESPN, like one of the first podcasts I can remember. And I used to listen to it all the time working out in the gym. And just the scouting methods of Bill Parcells and some of the stuff that he would take into a draft, it just resonated with me and stuck with me forever. So in scouting a guy like Mac Jones, this is what you want to do. I noticed that people come in here with comps, and every comp that they have to a player that they like is from some otherworldly player. If you compare every single player that you're talking about to the greatest of all time player at that position, you, my friend, are doing yourself a disservice. That's not what scouting is about. You're talking yourself into players. A great scout talks themselves out of players. That's how you don't make mistakes. If we're talking about, in particular here, Mac Jones, a lot of people come in here and keep saying that he's Tom Brady. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. How many Tom Brady's out there? Out of all these people who have played football, I know that Mac had a great year. There have been millions of quarterbacks who have had great years. As great as his year is, there have been some other people that we've known that they look like surefire guys. They could look like Matt Leinart, right? People with hindsight being 2020 or whatever like that. If you were to go back in that particular time period, what could you have said bad about Matt Leinart? You didn't think that he would be an NFL bust. He looked like Tom. That's a comparison to him too, right? The people were comparing him to Tom Brady. He had the seasons, he had the accolades, the championships, the Heisman Trophy. He had the game. He could think the game through and all that type of stuff. He was not Tom Brady. Even he wasn't Tom Brady. So we can go on in a list of quarterbacks. A lot of you people just have short-term memories and you just can't remember all these quarterbacks who've come out that didn't end up being superstars. So every year you guys are going to think that every single QB is a superstar or every single player regardless of position, and that's not necessarily the case. 9 out of 10 players end up failing. So you have to talk yourself out of players. So if you're doing a comparison, you want to have somebody who's realistic. It's not realistic for Mac Jones to beat Tom Brady. He could very well be Tom Brady. But what are the chances of that? You got to play it where the game is mostly played. It's like always worrying about the deep ball. Right? How many deep balls are you going to throw per game? You're going to mostly work the quick and mid-range game. So you want somebody who can really operate within the confines of that, because those are going to be most of your throws. Most of your prospects are not going to be Hall of Fame GOATs. They're just not. So with someone like Mac Jones, I look at, you know what, right? First of all, let's look at Mac Jones right here. Look at this season right here. All right, so Mac Jones is 6'3", 214 pounds. He is a 1.5-year starter. So I should have did this with his attempts, but we know he at least has 500 attempts, and I would say he has about, under 20 starts. So that's one of the things Bill Parcells used to talk about. He used to talk about having a certain amount of starts that he would like for a quarterback to have. The more, the better, especially if you're really just talking about somebody hitting the ground running. The least starts you have or the less starts you have, maybe you won't hit the ground running and you will need some time to adjust. It just is what it is, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily the case. Somebody could start for 1 year, come in like a Kyler Murray and be just fine. But some people could start 4 years and still need some adjustment. It's just an inexact science. So with that being said, right, his first season with the first handful of starts 2 years ago, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He was balling. Y'all see, I did all that shit on him in the offseason, said how good he was going to be, how Alabama was coming to quarterback factory, how they weren't going to have any drop-off with Mac Jones. These are all shit that I said, right? Coming into this season, this is the shit that I said, and he lived up to that. So he made me look good in that manner because he killed it. 77% completion percentage, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. If you look at that, you'd be like, yeah, that's Tom Brady. Can't do that. You can't do that. You know why? Because you're comparing Mac Jones doing it in college to Tom Brady, what he's doing now in the NFL, where it's totally different. Mac Jones' setup is better than just about everyone's in college. No, let's be real here. His setup is better than everyone's in college. Trevor Lawrence's, maybe Justin Fields has something similar going on right there. If you talk about the amount of NFL talent around them, we're not just talking about Ohio State or talking about Alabama or whomever like that. We're talking about these specific teams, right? Anytime I'm talking, I want to speak with specificity. Those teams, if you look at them, the amount of offensive linemen who are going to the NFL, the amount of wide receivers and tight ends who are going to the NFL, the running backs, the style of football, everything like that, those are dynamic setups that not very many people have on the collegiate level. Mac Jones has that. He had everything surrounding Mac Jones is virtually perfect. Virtually perfect. So you're going to look at Mac Jones and be like, well, man, he's doing this right here. He's definitely going to do that in the NFL. It does not work that way. Chances are Mac Jones could go to a team that, in comparison with by NFL standards, is not that good. So he may not perform like he was performing at Alabama, where his setup was perfect, and it was better than everyone's that was going against it. So think about this. Mac Jones will have played – all of his receivers are going in the first round. We're just talking about the guys like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. He didn't have Jalen Waddle most of the year, but he had John Mechie. John Mechie is the truth. He's going in the first round next draft. Devontae Smith should be the first receiver off the board, perhaps. He's going probably top 10. Jalen Waddle's probably going top 10. Jaleel Billings, the tight end, he's a first-round talent. He could perhaps play himself into the top 15 next year. He's going to kill it this year. He has certified 3 first-round offensive linemen. So we're talking about Evan Neal, the right tackle, next year he should be a top 5 pick. This year, Alex Leatherwood could be a top 20 pick, the left tackle. Landon Dickerson, a first-round pick. Even guys like Deontay Brown or Emil Ekiyor or whatever like that, maybe they're mid-round picks, but they're all draftable. His running back, Najee Harris, probably the first running back off the board. Hell, he could get that type of rub just off of Derrick Henry, and he could be, pause, gotta pause that right there. Some of you dudes just be waiting for something like that, and y'all be getting all, like, you know what I'm saying, tweaking your nipples and shit, like, oh, he said rub. No. He could get that type of rub from Derrick Henry, and he could be maybe a top 15 pick or something like that. Crazier things have happened, but he's definitely a first-round pick. His running backs beyond that's a perfect setup. That is an absolute perfect setup. So you cannot go in thinking that he will have exactly that in the league. Maybe not having that setup, it could be different for him. So I would not pick Tom Brady for Mac Jones. You know who I would pick? This is my guy right here who I think he is just exactly like, and I'll tell you how I do this. 6'3", 214, Mac Jones reminds me of Kirk Cousins. That's realistic. Kirk Cousins was a 4th-round draft pick. So Mac Jones gets the benefit of what Kirk Cousins has done in his career. And if you were to redraft Kirk Cousins, you would redraft him in the 1st round. Now, he doesn't have any intangibles, or he has a ton of intangibles, but the tangible stuff about it, he doesn't have anything that's going to wow you. I feel the same way about Mac Jones. What's going to wow you with Kirk Cousins and Mac Jones is their ability to think the game through, their ability to make quick decisions, not put your football team in harm's way, right? They're not going to lose you the game. They could win you the game, but more times than not, they're not going to lose you the game. They're going to get everybody prepared. They're going to get everybody on the same page. They're not going to make a ton of drastic mistakes. Now, people are going to look at this like, oh, Kirk Cousins, dude, that's not sexy. And some of you dudes going to look like, ooh, Kirk Cousins is sexy. Not you dudes, right? And what's up with these dudes with the goofy shit, man? Y'all got to, that's why I don't like, I wish football wasn't popular anymore, so us real football people who've played and all that can only be the ones talking about it. I see dudes up on Twitter talking about people's hand measurements and comparing it to their packages and shit like that. That type of shit don't exist in locker rooms. You could never be in a locker room, any type of locker room I was in, and talk like that. You would get beat up. Somebody would beat your ass. You guys got to stop that type of stuff. But Kirk Cousins, 6'3", 202 pounds. We'll look at his draft profile. Look at his stats. Kirk Cousins, people are not going to like because he's not a wow factor guy like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson, these guys who have stuff that you can look at and you're just like, well, damn, this mama jummer right here has this and this is exciting. There's nothing really exciting about Kirk Cousins unless you're one of these guys who are students of the game. Somebody like Kirk Cousins, I love watching these type of dudes play because they have to think the game through. He doesn't have a super strong arm. I don't think Mac Jones has a super strong arm. He doesn't have Josh Allen's arm or anything like that. But Kirk Cousins can make all the throws. He can throw the deep ball very well. I was listening to Jay Gruden, a podcast with Jay Gruden, his former coach, who he had a ton of success with in Washington, and he talked about how great of a deep ball Kirk Cousins throws. But you wouldn't consider Kirk Cousins some type of superior arm talent. You just wouldn't. But look at this. I wrote this down. I have some stuff that I wrote down here. Ever since Kirk Cousins became a starter in 2014, he's had 172 touchdowns and 65 interceptions. Just this past year, he had 4,200 yards, 35 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. But look at his totals. It's 29-11, 25-12, 27-13, 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 35 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. These type of dudes are very prevalent in the NFL, and that's never going to go away. All right? Everybody's still always going to look for your wild guys. Deshaun Watson's a wild guy to me. He has those tangible things that you can measure. But, man, there are a ton of people in this ilk who are making waves, and there are long-term starters. Jimmy Garoppolo, Teddy Bridgewater, Alex Smith. Alex Smith's got a little bit of athleticism to him, but I don't think he really wows you with anything. Phillip Rivers, I have to put him in this category. You can't say Phillip Rivers is a good athlete. He doesn't have a strong arm or anything like that. His biggest attribute will be his football intelligence. Mitch Trubisky, Gardner Minshew, Andy Dalton, and the best of them all to me, of all of the guys that you wouldn't think is a wild guy, is Matt Ryan. So Matt Ryan is one of these guys I will put, you could probably compare Mac Jones to, but Kirk Cousins, they have the same exact size, same exact arm strength, the attributes. Kirk Cousins ran like a 4.9 40. I think Mac Jones would run a 4.9 40. It is what it is. So people are going to always say, "No, man, we don't want guys like that." But there are plenty of guys that do have that wow factor that would just complete bust. RG3. Kirk Cousins turned out way better than RG3. They both were drafted the same year on the same team. One was the second pick in the draft, Robert Griffin. The other was round 4, pick 102. Kirk Cousins way better than RG3. Not even close. One of my all-time favorites, Marcus Mariota. That dude can fly. He may be the best pound-for-pound athlete at the quarterback position if you consider how tall he is, and he can run 4.4 and all that, big arm and everything like that. But he's not balling more than Kirk Cousins. And a guy like Jameis Winston. I'm not sure where to put Jameis Winston at, but he has a big arm to me, and maybe you could put him on the side with Kirk Cousins and them or whatever like that, but I would consider him a little bit more plus than that. Jameis Winston, I think, is very good, but we can't say that he's been better than Kirk Cousins. It is what it is by that. So looking at guys from elite power programs, that's difficult because of their setup. A guy like Kirk Cousins, he was at Michigan State. Who from Michigan State in that time period that he was playing with or throwing to, or even on his offensive line, how many of those guys in the NFL? I'll hang up and wait, right? Everybody from Mac Jones shit is going to be in the NFL, but that does not mean Mac Jones is not talented, and does not mean he shouldn't be a top 10 pick. Him going to like the Carolina Panthers, I think that's absolutely perfect with whatever pick they have. But back in the day, or traditionally, guys like Mac Jones go a little bit lower. So you're still going to have to fight through that with some of these GMs. They're going to look at Mac Jones and be like, no, top 10 picks are not for guys like Kirk Cousins. Can't use Tom Brady, right? If everybody's Tom Brady, then he should be a number 1 overall pick, even over guys that we think are wow factor guys like Patrick Mahomes. But that doesn't happen. He was a 6th round pick coming out. A lot of his guys that played at Michigan, he played with David Terrell, but these guys aren't superstars in the NFL, didn't really make a dent in the NFL. I mean, Steve Hutchinson was on his team or something like that, but you know what I'm saying. That's what it is. But he gets to the New England Patriots, his brain is superior to everybody. He doesn't have any wow factor to me. He doesn't have an extremely strong arm, but he's perhaps the greatest of all time. Same thing with my man Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, and these guys. But these guys are outliers. You can't compare everybody to them. So we talked about starts and attempts. So how many games someone started, how many throws they've attempted. You could start 4 years and be in a running offense and not have that many attempts. So I always imagine if all things are equal. So imagine if Kirk Cousins with his skill set played for Alabama. Don't you think he would produce like Mac Jones produced? He's producing like Mac Jones produced in the NFL. There's chances are he would have done that at Alabama too, in this exact Alabama team, had he been coming out and been the 3-star guy, right? He's a 3-star guy coming out. Mac Jones a 3-star guy coming out. Very similar. That's how you do comps, and that's how you don't talk yourself into somebody. You want to talk yourself out of somebody, but if you think he can be Kirk Cousins, then you think eventually he could be a very good player for you. But Kirk Cousins didn't start his first 3 years. So imagine that. So expecting Mac Jones to come in and be Tom Brady, unrealistic. Expecting Mac Jones to perhaps be Kirk Cousins, very realistic. And if he is that, then he's a very, very good player in the NFL. Now, is he Patrick Mahomes? No, but to me, that's the guy right there, Kirk Cousins, and you could live with that if you drafted Kirk Cousins.
What more can I say?
Top Billin.